Hi, I'm Don McCulley.
And I'm Andrew Kuykendall. Welcome to another episode of This Stuff is Complicated.
Well, Andrew, that's an interesting shirt.
It is. It's the hottest band in the world right now, Goose. And they have exploded in popularity. I saw them in February of 2020 in a 300-seat club in San Luis Obispo, California. Earlier this year, my son flew across the country to go see them, and they have been selling out like Madison Square Garden-sized venues.
They've been exploding.
Absolutely.
Kind of like insurance programs. So why don't we talk about how to vet an insurance program today?
Sure, that's almost as fun.
Okay, well, this will be way more interesting, right? So look, insurance programs were very popular. The Affordable Care Act brought us stop-loss group captives, which is our specialty. But we've seen level funded, and you've got all kinds of things coming out of the woodwork. So let's talk about how we would vet a program today if we were looking at it. And the first thing we'd start with is a track record of the principals. Well, Andrew and I have been in the program business for more than 20 years each, so we know what our background is. Some people come from different backgrounds to come in. Maybe they wrote a book. Maybe they knew some people in the industry. I mean, like, what other backgrounds have you seen come up?
Well, I think a lot of people kind of learn by doing without even realizing it was program business. My first experience with multi-employer was back in the early 90s.
Right.
And now, as we put in these different names and monikers to it, there's a lot of the principles that hold true. So it's not as scary to get in as it used to be, but people marketing themselves as the distinct experts in it is kind of interesting because a lot of it is very common sense to what's been going on, but there's a lot of pitfalls to be aware of.
Well, that's you and I think it's common sense, but the level funded explosion is really what I'm talking about here because there's a lot of bells and whistles coming out. And it's great to have the bells and whistles, but does it really move the needle up front on the pricing? Because if you're not moving the pricing up front, if you're not providing the lowest overall cost, you're not necessarily aligning with ERISA. And the whole point of insurance programs is to provide a better opportunity than what the carriers present as a major option. And that's really where level funded came. You know, everyone talks about the Great West Life programs, right? And Cigna's based on that. Those aren't independent, right? We are talking about independent insurance programs separate from carriers where you're borrowing pieces of insurance policies and risk mitigation and other solutions to provide that lower overall cost. But the independence is the key also, because if it's not independent from the carrier, then you're just buying a mocked up version of what they've already sold, or they're putting a different bell on it that doesn't really do anything other than raise their revenue.
Yeah, it's almost like putting together a puzzle of we need this aspect, we need our reinsurance cover, we need our administration, we need our repricing, whether it's network or...
Because at the end of the day, when we started our program, the first thing we want to do is make sure our claims were paid timely.
Absolutely.
Right? So that comes down to a lot of things. But when you've got independence, you don't always get those claims paid quickly because sometimes you're too far from where the reinsurance really resides. Because at the end of the day, programs are based on whose fortunes do you follow, right?
And then why would somebody be interested in putting themselves in that situation?
Well, that comes down to what's their promise and what's their why. So once again, if they're promising the lowest overall cost, do they actually deliver it? There's many pharmacy solutions that are coming out. They're saying they're transparent. Transparent does not mean necessarily that they're actually lowering the overall cost. It just means they're going to show you how much they charge you. And that's not a solution that works for everybody. And then the other question is the why does the program exist? And if it's just to make a profit for the principals, well, that's good for the principals, but that's not necessarily for the buying public.
And at the end of the day, this is a benefit for employees and their families. And I know that in our experience working together, we've often seen people able to maintain the same benefit levels, the same deductibles, the same copays year after year after year after year, which seems to be more predictable in a program setting rather than a fully insured setting.
Which gets back to the track record of the principal. So we obviously are independently owned. Some folks raise private equity money. That has a very high cash register cost up front. And we've seen a lot of these under 50 life programs that come to market, and 2 or 3 years later, some of those pieces are being unwound or they're just not around anymore. There was a big one out of Texas a few years ago that raised over $50 or $100 million, and it lasted like 2 renewals, right? There's another one that we were competing with briefly that lasted for 1 renewal because they were setting their aggregate attachment for the employers at expected at 100% There was no margin of safety, no quarter. They were ignoring all the principles of underwriting, like your favorite word and my least favorite word, completion factors, which are real. But at the end of the day, the principals might not know about completion factors or what's the difference between this network or that network. They're just saying, hey, we're going to bring you this zero deductible program, and it sounds great on paper. But at the end of the day, if they aren't able to deliver a $0 deductible solution, then you're going to have a tough renewal.
So you really need to vet each and every one of your partners through this.
Well, yeah. I mean, the top three things we wanted to talk about here, we want people to understand, right, is who are the principals? What are their track records in getting into this, right? What's the independence? So are we in a situation where we're dealing with people that are committed for the long term? And that just because they raise high octane money doesn't mean they're not committed for the long term. It's just a different price. And then lastly, what's the promise? What's the why? And are they able to deliver? Have they done it in the past? And can they do it in the future? And that's really what we're talking about today.
And that ties up beautifully with one of the songs they played the night I saw them back in February 2020, Lead the Way.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, I'm Don McCulley.
And I'm Andrew Kuykendall. Thanks for joining us on This Stuff is Complicated.